5, so you can be looking for it. Is Oakley and Roman still in here? Come here. Come here. All right. What'd you guys do Friday?
So Friday, we got to swim, and I probably accidentally opened my eyes underwater. Probably.
What did you learn?
I learned that when this little guy couldn't see God, he had to climb in a tree. I forgot his name.
Zacchaeus?
Zacchaeus. He was a young man.
Roman, what was the other story? Do you remember the other story?
No. I do.
About the sheep?
No. So one sheep got lost, and the shepherd went to find it, and he found his sheep, and he said to his friends and neighbors, "Rejoice with me. I found my sheep that is lost."
Very good. Here's a bonus point. Do you remember the memory verse?
For today?
For camp.
No.
Was it for the Son of Man?
For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost.
Very good. All right. Okay. In case you didn't realize, they got to go to kids camp Friday. So whenever we get to send somebody to go do something, even if it's something simple as that, I think it's good for the church to get to experience that when we send somebody to go do something, they get something out of it. And obviously they paid attention because they knew the stories. And the verse. And remember the swimming pool. Today's message is about giving and kind of about tithing, but giving isn't just about tithing. There's more to it, and we're going to talk about that as we go through the scripture. And I'll tie going to camp into that as we go through here. But we'll be doing the first 12 verses. But mainly God is talking about stewardship, and it requires us to leverage our wealth for the kingdom of God and our resources to further the kingdom and to have an impact rather than hoarding on to things that are just temporary. Hoarding is not good for us. And there's hoarding of possessions, but there's also hoarding of your time. Being selfish with your time and how you spend that to help other people and to help the church and the community and those things. Most of you have seen a map of Israel, I'm assuming. And there are two major bodies of water in Israel, and you can see them on the map. You have the Sea of Galilee and you have the Dead Sea. And they're connected by the same river. The same river feeds both of these bodies of water. One is a reservoir, and one is kind of like a canal. If you look at it, it's all connected. But there's a big difference in the two bodies of water that I'm going to kind of point out that are obvious. The Sea of Galilee is a vibrant place, full of fish, wildlife. It's green. There's trees. There's communities. It's a very bustling area because of the water that is there. The water is used for irrigation, for a lot of things that water flowing through there is a benefit. It's living. It's full of life. It's a canal because the water flows in, fills the river, and flows out. The same amount of water that's coming in is the same amount of water that's going out. It's not dammed up and creating anything. It just naturally flows through. But that same river that flows through the Sea of Galilee feeds into the Dead Sea. And that when it gets to the Dead Sea, it becomes stagnant. It just sits there. And it evaporates and creates a very harsh environment. Nothing lives in the Dead Sea. Beth's been to both places, and she's come back and told me about what it's like. The Dead Sea is kind of a nasty place. Dries out your skin, and it's just not a very good place to go. So there's nothing that lives there other than tourists that come through. But that's kind of how we need to be with our time, our money, and our resources. We need to allow it to flow through us to benefit God. Because if we don't, and we just hoard it all together, it becomes like the Dead Sea, and it begins to affect us in a negative way. Because we begin to die, basically, because we have nothing that we're doing with what God's given us. So you can't grow and mature and develop the way that God is calling you to go and to do if you never have an outlet or anything to do with what God's given you. Verse 1 through 3 says, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupt, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You will have heaped up treasures in the last days." James is issuing a warning here. It's a warning against stockpiling your resources. Because if you can stockpile all this stuff, and it will begin to rot. The clothes that they're talking about, they'll just begin to deteriorate and fall apart. The precious metals, they begin to corrode because they're not being utilized. There's another parable of a rich man that had overabundance of grain that he was getting, and instead of giving it to the people that were starving, he thought, I need to build more silos because I need to be able to store all of what I've got. And because of his greed, he died. He had all of this that he could have been helping people with, but instead, he was being greedy. Hoarded resources become a visual witness against us. You know, the community sees us. And if they see us as somebody that is just a hoarder, we have all of these things that we can help people with, and we don't utilize it to help people, then that begins to hurt our witness. Now, our church is getting to a point where we have some availability to help some people again. And we have. And that's what the resources that the church has is for. The church isn't here to make money. That's not what we're about. A church shouldn't be seen as rich. It should be seen as a place that ministers to people. And part of that is you guys. And it's not just tithe. Tithing is part of it because we need to be able to keep the lights on and the water and those types of things. Maintain the building. You know, we need tithing to help pay for all those types of things. But we also need people to give their time. VBS is coming up pretty soon. It takes a lot of people to run a VBS. It takes your time. I was very busy this week with a lot of things going on. But I was so blessed that I took the time to go with those kids to camp. We had a blast. I've posted some videos and stuff on the church's Facebook page of them just jumping up and down and worshiping the Lord in music and learning the verses and just really being engaged in what was going on. And I was blessed because I gave up my day to go spend time with some little kids at a camp for the day. I love camp. I always have been one that if I could go to the church camp, I would go. Because for me, it's energizing and rejuvenating. It's almost like going to revival. I think I get more out of going to camp than the kids do. But it takes time and energy to go. And a lot of times you have to take off of work, giving up that vacation time and to go and spend and do that. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I was working at a secular job, when you went back to work, it was harder work to catch back up from taking the week off. Then sometimes you wonder, was it even worth taking the week off? But it is. We need people that come up here and clean. Marilyn plays the piano for us. That takes time. Brother Gary comes up here and does music. That takes time. We have several different volunteers that show up to do Sunday school classes and things that takes time. The yard gets mowed. That takes time. Those are all part of your tithe. Because you're supposed to give of all of your resources. That just doesn't mean what your pocketbook. It's all of your resources. Go on to verse 4. It says, "Indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which kept back by fraud, excuse me, cry out, and the cries of the reaper have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabbath. You have lived on the earth in pleasure and luxury. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you." The rich are condemned for keeping back the wages for the workers. They consume life and energy of others to fund their own luxury. It says the rich are condemned. That doesn't mean all rich are condemned. Biblically, there is nothing wrong with being rich. In fact, there are places in the Bible where it encourages us to do things that will help us to be rich. Because if you are rich, you have the ability to support the church and support the community and support the things that God's called you to do. That is what you're to do with your riches. You use the riches for the glory of God. This is talking about people that are just continually gaining their riches at the expense of the other people. And that is wrong. You're to use those riches for God's kingdom. God hears when we consume more than we contribute. The Pharaoh, whenever the Egyptians were in control of the Israelites, they used the Israelites to further their own goals. They were getting rich off of the work of the Israelites. And they were continuing to suppress them and to keep them under their thumb so that they could continue to become rich. And they began to cry out to God, and then till God listened to the point that, okay, no more. And he took them out of that situation. You know, you can read through there, and they weren't real grateful for it for a while. But the Egyptians were taking advantage of the Israelites, and they were punished for it. We are not to take advantage of the people around us to further our own goals. Excuse me. We withhold value when we refuse to give our time to serve the church. Your time is valuable. It's just as valuable as anything else that you have. And if it's valuable to you, do you not think it's valuable to the Lord? You give your time because it's valuable to God as well. Sometimes you have the more ability to give of your time than you do financially. Because you may not, you just really just don't have the money. But you have time. Now, I'll give my testimony a little bit here. And this is just for illustration. In 2020, God called me to leave the job that I had and to follow him into ministry. And I stepped away, just cold. Just gave him my notice, gave him 2 weeks, and walked away. After being there for 34 years. God had been working on me for several weeks before that, maybe even 2 or 3 months. Then I finally got up enough courage to tell Beth kind of what was going on. And to my surprise, she was fine. Yeah, God was working in her heart as well. And I walked away from that job with no income. I just walked away. That left us with no weekly income, no medical insurance, no retirement, nothing. It was just all was gone all at once. But I walked away from that and began to pour my time into God in study and in prayer. Every day I would walk 3 miles a day and be in prayer that full 3 miles of walking. And not knowing where I was going, what direction God was actually taking me in, but just having faith that I was being taken care of. But I walked away and gave all that time to God. For 5 months, that's what I did. And then he called me to go to work at the church camp. At the church camp, I was able to continue to pour my time into what God was calling me to do. I was paid almost as much as I was making when I was working for McKee. I had better insurance. I had all the way around, I had better benefits. And I was able to pour more time into the work that God called me to do. And I did that until God called me away from there. And that's what's brought me to here. I don't have a lot of financial resources to just pour into helping people, but I have a lot of time available in a day. And I have to manage that time to make sure that I'm putting it where God called me to put it. He provided for Beth to have a part-time job. And in that job, she works for a godly lady that helps pour into she's watched this lady pour into people that she is in contact with, help people pay their rent, make sure that people have food. And so she's able to be involved with ministry through that. And now she helps that lady go to Bible study on Thursdays. God uses your time whenever you give it to him. Therefore, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmers wait for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the earlier and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. Now, Bud was right on cue with my discussion for this. There's some squash in the foyer back there that he put time and energy into producing. A farmer has to be one of the most patient people that there is, because they till the ground, they nurture the earth with whatever it may need, fertilizer or whatever, and they put a seed in the ground and cover it up, but then you can't see it. You don't know what's going on beneath. You wait for the rains to come. If you're a gardener, you go out and water it, but if it's a huge farm, you're dependent on the rain. You're dependent on the rain for the crops to produce. But all you can do in the meantime is nurture it and wait. True stewards view life through the eternal lens. You have to look beyond what's right here. A farmer is looking beyond because he's looking for the fruits and the vegetables to come. That's what his focus is on. Everything in between is just to get you to that point. That's the way that it is with your time and your resources. It is for you to have a way, excuse me. It's for you to have a way to use what God has given you to produce what God desires. Excuse me. Radical generosity with your time and energy feels like burying seed in the dirt. It requires patience, faith, and trust that God will bring the growth. Yeah, I was out of work for 5 months. You know, I never missed a bill, never missed a house payment, never went hungry. Yeah, I had no idea the direction that God was taking us to. And the church camp, was not even on the radar. Wasn't ever some place that I ever thought was a place that I would go to work. I didn't go to the church camp looking for a job. I had excuse me. I had a relationship with the camp from taking kids down there for years. And they knew me. They had a need for somebody to come and run the operations. And they just called me and said, hey, would you come and do this? So God provided for it all the way around. But be patient. Be faithful. And listen to what God has for you. But don't just listen for what God has for you. When God talks to you, take action. Go do what God has called you to do. It may be going talking to your neighbor. And it may not be going and having a gospel conversation with your neighbor necessarily. It may just be going and getting to know who your neighbor is and know your neighbor's needs. Because once you know your neighbor's needs, then you know how to minister to them. You know what God's calling you to do. Verse 10 goes on to say, my brethren, take the prophet who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of the suffering and the patience. And indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perceptions of Job. That word's just not working today. And seen the end intended by the Lord. That the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brethren, do not swear neither by heaven nor by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, lest you fall into judgment. The Bible is full of people that have had to make sacrifices. Job is the one that we usually kind of draws our attention because he lost so much. But he got it back because of his obedience. He got back more than what he lost. Now, I'm not saying that's a guarantee for you, but be willing to give what you have, knowing that God is going to take care of you. Job was rich. He lost it, and it was returned. There's a lot of people in the Bible that were rich, that God used. Solomon, David, Abraham, all of these guys were very wealthy people. God didn't condemn them for their wealth. He used them. He allowed them to use the wealth that they were given to do the work that God called them to do. They didn't give it all away, but they gave away what needed to be done to further the kingdom of God. And I know most of you here, I'm speaking to the choir. I know that you know these things. Sometimes we have to be reminded that there's more to tithing than the offering plate. And it's not all about giving your time in the church either. It's about giving your time in your community, to your neighbors, to a stranger alongside the road, safely. But don't put yourself in harm's way, but be willing to help people in need. But when you help people in need, give God credit so that they know that God was looking out for them. Thursday, I did a funeral for a lady. She was 98 years old. I'd never met her before. But I got to go visit with her family and to learn about this very godly lady. And I got to minister to a whole family of people that I had never met before. And when I got through with the funeral, I was talking with the husband, and I told him to make, if he needed, because they didn't have a church because they'd been homebound for quite some time. So I told him that I was available if he needed to call and talk. And his response was, I enjoy having you as my pastor, but I really want to know if I can have you as my friend. That meant a lot to me, that I had had enough of an impact on that man that he wanted to be able to call me friend. I hope that in the coming weeks that I'll be able to be picking him up and bringing him to church with us, because he lives in Gentry. Because I knew his daughter from living next door to my dad, and they didn't know who else to call, so I was the call. You never know how God's going to use you, where He's going to call you, and what's going to happen. So, I'm going to leave you with this challenge. Look at your calendar this week and see if you can dedicate 2 hours of your week of unhurried time to minister to somebody. Don't know what that looks like or what God's will call you to do, but be willing to take 2 hours out of your week to pour into somebody else. Gary talks a lot about sharing the gospel with people every time you get an opportunity. Sometimes sharing the gospel is more about spending a little bit of time with somebody than it is taking a 3-minute conversation to tell them who Jesus is. Because sometimes somebody needs to know that you care for them before they will listen to you. Their hunger, the hunger pains that they may be having, are more important to them in that moment than hearing about what Jesus said. But if you feed them and you take away that need, then they'll listen. Be willing to take 2 hours of this week and pour into somebody. Identify if you have some resources that you don't need that somebody else could use. Maybe you've got something laying around the house that you don't need anymore, but you know somebody that could use it. Be willing to give it up. Beth and I, over the years, have given away a lot of things. Sometimes it's clothes. Sometimes it's shoes. We've given away 2 different motorhomes to people that have lost homes in tornadoes. We've given away some vehicles that were worn out for us, but they were still good for somebody else to get some use out of them to be able to get by. There were resources that we just had that was just deteriorating away because we didn't have a need for them, but somebody else did. So look around at what you have. You may have something that is just sitting, rotting away because you're not utilizing it, but there's somebody else that may make a world of difference in their life if they had it. Be willing to give away some of those things. Yeah. God has always blessed us when we've done that. We've never done it for a blessing, but you can always look back and see the blessing afterwards. And the last thing is your financial giving. Make it automatic so that you don't forget to give. If you're one of the people that don't write checks anymore, you don't carry cash, the church does have an app that you can go to and make an online tithe, so that you don't have an excuse to not make it your tithe. But also be willing to give above and beyond when you can. We have kids that are going to go to church camp that may need sponsors. We have VBS coming up. We need resources for VBS. We need donations of items for VBS and different things like that. Look for where you can give. You stand. If you haven't done this first, the rest of it doesn't make sense. The message has been about giving. Giving of your time, your resources, your energy. But first and foremost, have you given your life to Jesus? That is the first and biggest gift that you can give and receive. If you're here this morning and you haven't given your life to Jesus, I'd like to have a talk with you about that today. You're going to give to one or the other. You're going to give your time and resources and energy to God, or you're going to give them to the world. Where do you want your focus to be? Be back 6:30. Have our first Sunday singing. Hot dogs and manwich and sloppy joes. I think Tyler's going to make some zucchini bread. So. Thank you guys for being here. Join us for service. Mike, can you close us?